Well, welcome into a special Saturday night. I know you're used to seeing us on Sunday morning, but you know what? These Saturday games matter for some reason now.
It's that whole playoff thing. So here we are, Saturday.
Yeah. Um, so we'll get right into. There was a bit of news which I know that you I know this news very much tickled your fancy this week after it took giving up 63 points to the Las Vegas Raiders for Brandon Staley to finally lose his job.
All right, let me premise this. I'm not about people losing their jobs, okay? I don't want it to be like I had his name in bright lights and I wanted a guy to lose his job. But the guy wasn't good. It was time. Halfway through the season, they knew. Come on. After the playoff debacle last season, it should have happened by like week 6. They just weren't clicking. It took it took the Raiders to drop 63 on them to finally say, okay, it's time to move on. So, yes, Mr. Staley is gone along with the general manager, and now the Chargers are just there, going to play out the rest of the season. And now the question is, who will take on this roster?
Yeah. And I mean, what would be just real quick before you actually get into some games? What would be the biggest thing to fix about this team and franchise going into next year?
Talent wise, there's nothing to fix. They have talent all over the place. It's just, I think the voice was just falling stale, and you need something different. That offense needs to play a little faster. Maybe a change in running back. Eckler really has been subpar this year, so
Yeah.
maybe a change in running back. Your wide receivers, when healthy, are great, but you've got some guys who can't stay on the field. Keenan Allen's getting a little long in the tooth. Still a productive wide receiver, but getting long in the tooth. That defense is solid, but slowly starting to show some age. So I think you're either going to say, all right, we're going to tear this down and rebuild from the bottom up, or you're going to maybe sign some guys and try to go one more playoff push before you really tear it down.
Yeah. Um, let's jump into these Saturday games because they all had playoff implications, and that's why we're doing the show. 12 hours earlier or something.
Who cares about the Chargers? We're just about the playoffs at this point.
Yeah.
Playoffs.
The Chargers are not looking at the playoffs. Just as an update.
No.
um, so the Saturday slate kicked off with Cincinnati. They have somehow crawled their way back into the playoff picture without Burrow, and you know what? Hats off to Jake Browning for that one. Clap it up. Clap it up.
Clap it up. The man deserves it. Playing well. Playing well and under a lot of pressure. Like you said, this is, each game for the Bengals from here on out is basically their playoff lives, and he performed.
What's been the most consistent themes throughout this kind of resurgence? I don't want to say resurgence because they were kind of in it, but they were looking like they're falling out, and then it was a quarterback. We figured, oh yeah, they're done. But what's been like the steadiest things that they've done well in order to keep this train going?
I feel they've used Mixon a little more. I feel the run game has been a little more consistent. And Browning's just been good. He's been getting the ball to the guys he needs to. He shows no fear. And they're winning games they have to win. Point blank, they are winning the games they have to win. They understand it's a uphill climb, and Browning so far has shown no fear, and he's playing well. So that's all you can expect at this point. You put the chips all in. Unfortunately, Joe Shiesty's out, so you got
Yeah.
to do what you got to do now, and Browning's delivering. So you just stay with this formula and see where it takes you.
Now they have I got some notes down for the remaining schedules for the teams that took care of business on Saturday. So Cincinnati will finish out the season at Pittsburgh, which now they which well we'll get into their game more in a minute. My horseshoe boys, but we'll get into that more in a minute. But now with their loss, now it looks like Cincinnati could really bury Pittsburgh, put them in the grave. Then they go
Mm-hmm.
to Kansas City. They've been looking very shaky of late, and then they
Mm-hmm.
close out at home against Cleveland. So in theory, not only could they close out or at worst go 2-1, they
Mm-hmm.
also have a chance to maybe even get that 5 seed if they can beat Cleveland.
Honestly, I don't see why not. Those three teams are all beatable. Let's be honest. No one fears Kansas City anymore. You don't know what you're going to get with them, so yeah, why not? They could go 3-0. I think if they go 2-1, they could be a lock for the playoffs because the teams underneath them are not good at all.
What do you think now? What would you think if let's say Cincinnati can get up to that 5 seed if they can leapfrog Cleveland? Are
Mm-hmm.
they a more dangerous opponent for whoever falls down to 4 between Jacksonville and Kansas City? And does Cincinnati have a chance to beat either one of them in a do or die playoff game?
Yeah, I believe so. Cincinnati doesn't. Cincinnati's playing with no fear. Like they know what they have to do. If there was any apprehension or they didn't feel confident, they would have lost. They would have lost today, but they didn't. They were able to come back, take the game to overtime, and win. So, no, they don't fear anybody. They're going to go and do what they need to do. I think there's a good mix of veterans on that team and guys who understand that. Hey, yeah, we don't have Joe Shiesty, but you know what? We believe in Browning, and we're going to let him lead us. So, yeah, they could very well run the table.
And then like that, it's like I said, I'm not to sound redundant, but it's just so weird to think that they're in this position after losing Shiesty.
It is. I think once Shiesty went down and they were like, he's out for the year, everyone was ready to hang it up. But that just goes to show you don't know what your backup is all about till you put him out there. So this guy, in theory, maybe he's playing for a job somewhere else. Let's be honest. If he goes on a decent run, gets them into the playoffs, and maybe wins a playoff game, some teams may say, "Hey, let's take a chance. Is he available? What can we do?"
Yeah. Um. So let's. I'm gonna shrug some dirt off my shoulders real quick.
Good lord,
And
like it, like you beat Philly or something, man. It was freaking Pittsburgh, and I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. You won.
I'll tell you, one beat them for the first time since 2009. We haven't beaten the Steelers in at least a regular season game in what's this 15 years.
Let's compare those Steelers teams. Let's be realistic here.
I mean,
But
there was
no,
there were still some good Colts teams in there.
but no, honestly, no. You guys went and handled business. Minshew, this may have been one of his. This was definitely one of his best games. He
Yeah,
was definitely making some throws that at some point I was like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. But with those throws, there's usually one or two interceptions where you're like, Uncle Rico, what are you doing? But
mm-hmm.
no, he kept it solid. The defense played great. They did what they needed to do. Pittsburgh is an absolute mess. I think they really need to look at things. And if people right now aren't saying maybe there needs to be a possible change at the head coach position, then people are blind.
Yeah. And uh, this nothing. The way this game went was absolutely perfect for the never-ending emotional roller coaster that is being a Colts fan, especially this year, because we spotted them a 13-0 lead, and it took us rallying off 30 points to take care of this. And I mean, like at the game, the final score looks more like a blowout and like we round into forms, but I was a bit concerned in this one. Like I see the score early on, I'm like, okay, they're in the red zone twice in like the first 6 minutes of the game or whatever it was. I was like, here we go, break my heart again.
No, once they took the lead, once it was 14-13, at that point all bets were off. And I was like, all right, the Colts can win this game.
Yeah.
And you just saw it. Like it was almost like those 13 points were the best that the Steelers could muster. And then after that, they just didn't know what to do. They couldn't get out of their own way. Najee Harris, they just need to move on from that. Like
Yeah.
legit, it's don't sign him for his 5th year. Don't extend him. It's time to move on from Najee Harris. He needs a change of scenery. I think that's just a bad marriage. Time to move on. Um, Mitch is gonna give you whatever Mitch gets. Two or three great throws, and then the rest is just a hot mess. Like, let's be realistic. If Steelers fans thought that Mitch was gonna all of a sudden take him on a bit of a magical run till Kenny came back, sadly mistaken. Even Pickett, hasn't been great this year. So I really think it's almost kind of like a New Orleans situation. You're living in the past, you're throwing some band-aids on some things, and you're thinking, okay, we can relive the glory years. You're not there anymore. There needs to be some drastic changes. I was listening to Ben Roethlisberger on his podcast, and he had talked about how no one fears the Steelers anymore. That whole culture, black and yellow, where when you knew the Steelers were coming to town, you were apprehensive. You had fear. That isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
Not at all. So I think there needs to be a culture change, and if Tomlin can't get with that, then maybe it is time to move on.
I mean, do you think it will be, or do you think they kind of like, listen, you're real. Like, we never put you on the hot seat. We never put our coaches in general on the hot seat. Next year, this is it. Like, do something. Stop. Enough with these 500 or 8-9, or I mean, the streak may be over this year.
It very well could be. Tomlin and Belichick are a dying breed. They're that old hard coach kind of deal, where it's kind of like my way or the highway. Even though Tomlin kind of listens to his guys a bit more than Belichick, but no, Tomlin needs to understand that the shine is off. Like this is what it is. If they don't sit him down in the offseason and say, hey, we need something better than 500. We need to be in it till the end. If you can't do that here, then maybe we need to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And you need to really reshape that roster. That roster really isn't that great. Really isn't.
Now, so my Colts down the stretch, actually not. I think we could have not. I don't want to jinx this. I don't want to jinx this. But we close out the season on the road against Atlanta, home against the Raiders, and home against Houston, who we've already beaten. We've already beaten and have a tiebreaker over. So,
right.
I mean, that's and we're currently holding the last wild card spot, which will probably, if the teams don't change,
right,
that will probably not. That will probably just stay the same because we don't have a tiebreaker against Cleveland. We don't have a tiebreaker against Cincinnati. So, I mean, is that a reasonable expectation I should have, even as a fan, that the Colts should close out the season on a 3-game? Well, I guess it would be more than a 3-game, but run the table to end the season.
The only game that I'm slightly hesitant on are the Raiders, because right now I think the Raiders are going to play for Pierce. I think they want Pierce to be their head coach. So those guys are going to dig deep and play as well as humanly possible.
Yeah,
I could see the Raiders giving you some problems. So I would hope, as a fan, worst case scenario, 2-1. 2-1, and just for good measure, we hope for some help. Just because with Houston, you don't know what this, concussion situation is. If it lingers for another game or two, they may very well just shut down Stroud for the rest of the season. That's your franchise guy. If you know you've got a long shot and you might not make the playoffs, don't push your guy.
Yeah.
Why push him? Fight for like a one and done postseason. Yeah, that's great to say you made the postseason, but what are you risking long term?
Yeah.
So
and at the end of the day, they still had a significantly better season than anyone was expecting them to have.
Oh, they totally did. And they're only going to get better. There's no doubt about it. But I think right now, if you're a Colts fan, you take it a game at a time. The Raiders game is the only game where I would be apprehensive about.
Yeah.
but um, you always want some help. So if you've got some, some teams that might be able to, knock a couple teams off a peg for you, then root for them too. But the way it goes, finish up 2-1. Yeah, you guys very well could be locked into that seventh seed.
Yeah, and I agree. Like the Vegas game would be the one I would be concerned about, but I'm also glad that that's the one at home, and Atlanta's the one on
Oh, you'll handle Atlanta,
the road.
no problem.
I wish it wasn't on Christmas Eve. I'd see what the tickets are going for and work my way down there. Imagine if I saw the Colts 3 times this season.
Yeah, watch them from home, man. Let's not do that, man. I need all the help I can get. I don't need you coming down here and ruining it for me. No.
Oh,
Let's let's
oh,
let's let's shoot for next year. Fresh start, building the momentum.
yeah. Oh, and then of course the third game Saturday was Detroit hosting Denver. Denver had that hot streak. They've cooled off a lot. They look like they're kind of outside looking in right now. Obviously, getting pushed around by Detroit might very well put a fork in them as well. Uh, Detroit now closes out the season at with actually both Minnesota games with with a road game against the Cowboys squeezed in between. So that's obviously like they could very well end Minnesota's playoff dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and Dallas is a tough one. I mean, but that one also could decide, that 3 seed scenario instead of
Mm-hmm.
who gets three, who gets four.
I think it's a good game. I think the Dallas game is an important game for them. I think it's because it's going to have a playoff atmosphere, no doubt about it. Because we don't know where Dallas is going to be at that point either. So I think it's good for Detroit. It's going to be new territory for them,
Yeah,
really new territory. So you're going to see how this team really stacks up and can handle that pressure. So if they can come out with a win out of Dallas, at that point, they very well are could be they very well are the team that maybe no one wants to play in the NFC.
yeah,
So I think it'll be good for them, but they just need to take it one game at a time. With them, they could fall anywhere. They're probably not getting the 1 seed. So very well, they just need to take it a game at a time. Dallas, though, I think is a very important game for them.
yeah. And I think that it's especially the way they've been playing lately has not been great. So they would definitely be in need of a big confidence boost.
Definitely, they have been a little up and down, but it's always one of those things where you want to be going from November on playing your best ball.
Hmm.
That's where you really want to be at your best. So I think they handle business with Denver, and then they just continue on from there. They just have to focus one game at a time. Can't think too far ahead, worrying about where you're going to fall seating wise. Handle the business in front of you, tighten up the ship a bit, and then just see wherever you land is where you play. You want to get to the dance. That's what it's about.
Yeah, and
But
uh,
one thing, real quick with Denver though, the game that could maybe truly end their playoff run. They play New England on Christmas Eve.
yeah,
New England, I think now at this point is taking the role of villain, and they just want to end. They're like, we're not making the playoffs, so anyone we play that has hopes, we're gonna dash them. So I think Denver needs to be very careful with that game because if they need it, Belichick will plan well enough to end that. So something to watch out for.
yeah, it could be a bad trap, and you figure Bill is not gonna. If this is truly his last year in New England, he's not gonna want to go out like a limp lamb.
Oh no, he's not. He's going to go out as the nasty, nasty, evil empire that he's built for 20 plus years.
Do you foresee uh, the the Lions the way they've been playing? Is there
Mm-hmm.
any their struggles of late? Is there anything that you see out of them to make you think like, okay, this is going to cause them issues in the playoffs?
I think they need a little more. They need a little more consistency in the pass game. They just need to tighten that up. Everyone knows that the go-to guy is St. Brown, but Laporta's really stepped up. He's really been incredible this year, and they've really started going to Montgomery's always been the guy. Gibbs though has really started to show. I think the last couple of weeks. So I think if they can just get a good balance of the run and the pass, that's where the issue is. The defense is held pretty decent. I'm not too worried about them as long as that defense is healthy. I think it's just the offense. They've got to score points,
Yeah,
especially in the NFC with the top three teams. You got to be able to put points up.
yeah. NFC playoffs might be a bit of a barn burner.
Really, if you're not putting up 25 to 30, at this point you probably don't have a shot.
Yeah, if you're not putting up 25, you're losing by 15.
Exactly.
So we'll transition into some games, and the Sunday games this week are a bit of a painter's palette. They're kind of all over the map a little bit.
It's like a Bob Ross. If you like your little trees, you're painting your trees.
But there are two that we can at least have some fun with. One is probably the only one that's like two legitimate, evenly or close to evenly matched opponents, and that's the Sunday nighter. So we got to go through all Sunday during afternoon dealing with like little itty bitties until we get to Ravens Jags on Sunday night, and they're not. I mean, they're 2 games apart, so they're really not. They're both division leaders. They're both in line for home field at the moment, but they're not really looking like they're gonna factor into each other, at least for one round of the playoffs. But
Right.
I mean, what's more at stake, because Miami's got the Jets this week. So if Baltimore slips out, then they could wind themselves being in more of a virtual tie and throw inhibition to a win for the last 3 games. And the Jags, if they lose, they'd have the same. We talked about it last week, and I guess we're just a week delayed. They've got the same record as Indy,
Yeah.
and maybe even Houston. So now you're back in this funky situation with the AFC South being not as clean and tidy.
When it comes to Baltimore, yeah, their focus is the number 1 seed, so they're just trying to make sure they're playing strong and just you want the number 1 seed. Let's be honest, you want the playoffs to go through your town. Everybody knows about how Kansas City for years, the AFC playoffs have gone through Arrowhead. Not this year, which is nice. Finally, not gonna lie, I'm enjoying it. Little twinkle in my eye, a little extra pep in my step. But yeah, I think Baltimore really wants that 1 seed, so they're going to continue to prepare and play for that. The Jags need to just play consistent ball. That's what this comes down to. They need if they don't win the division, then it's who knows what's going to happen. I think they really need the division. They've been really up and down. They've had injuries, especially to T-Law.
Speaking of him, they got to make sure he's right for this one, because last week he did not look very right.
No, and that's great that your quarterback wants to gut things out and all, but you really have to look at your, these last 3-4 weeks of the season and say, hey, if we really want this division, what do we need to do? And their defense has shown flashes of being great, and then there are just times where they just give up the plays. So they've got to tighten the ship and just take it 1 game at a time. But I believe the Jags need this game more than Baltimore. If Baltimore was to lose, I think they'd be able to rebound.
Yeah.
I think they have that ability. The Jags, I don't know. I really don't know if they do.
Do you think there's any chance that they could surprise Baltimore?
They'd have to play an absolute perfect game. I really do. I think Baltimore is just on a different level right now. I think Baltimore is just clicking. They make the plays they need to. Their defense is solid. You don't see Baltimore really beat themselves. Like they don't really make those mistakes and they let teams back in. They seem to be able to handle what they need to do. The running backs are relatively healthy, knock on wood. because you know how we like to unfortunately jinx the
Yeah.
running back position there.
Yes.
But
We do have a bad habit of that this year.
yeah, we're bad that way. But I think the Jags really need to play a complete game to get themselves back on course. And if they're going to play a perfect and complete game, this is the game to do it. Sunday night.
Yeah. So let's say stars align and they're able to pull something off. What do they? What are like two or three things that they need to really stop about Baltimore in order to pull something like that off?
It all starts with Lamar. You can't let Lamar scramble. Lamar's shown he can throw the ball. I would rather keep Lamar in the pocket and say, you know what? If Lamar beats us with his arm, then so be it. Because once Lamar gets out of the pocket and starts picking up first downs and running, it's a wrap. Because right then and there, your enemy becomes the clock. Because there's especially if they're up, a score. They've got Justin Tucker on the bench, probably the greatest kicker of all time.
Yep.
You
Hey,
know,
hey,
he
hey, hey, hey! Leave Adam if he's throwing it.
Oh, don't even. You borrowed him for a little bit. Calm it down now, buddy. Calm it down. But that's the thing. I would rather Lamar beat me by sitting in the pocket and throwing for 30, 40 times. Then at that point you've done the best you can. But if they let Lamar get out and scramble, then at that point that offense becomes even better because you've got wide receivers that can, break routes. That becomes street ball.
Yeah.
And at that point, not many teams can keep with those guys. And your running backs are solid. They're bangers, got Gus the Bus and those guys. So,
Can't,
and to give the Jags credit, they do have, athletic linebackers and such. But when Lamar's running around crazy, like it's NFL Street, it's tough to beat him.
can you imagine if they remade NFL Street with Lamar Jackson?
Man, I've been wishing for that May game to come back for years, man. Throw me some Lamar all day, all day.
The game was ahead of its time. Do you think they can get by with just controlling Lamar, or do they actually have to shut him down?
I think like I said, if you can limit them and keep them in the pocket, I think it gives them a decent shot. Like the Jags have weapons, but like you said, you got to keep T-Law upright. They've got to be able to move the ball on the ground as well. They like to throw to the running backs. We know Travis, they like to throw to him out of the backfield and stuff, but they got to be able to run the ball. But I would rather take my chances with Lamar staying in the pocket, getting less than 10 yards rushing, than him rushing for 50, 60 yards and, playing NFL Street. Like, you can't stop them. If that gets to that point, they are nearly impossible to beat.
So the remaining schedules, huge game next week for Baltimore. So I mean, you almost to the point where you wonder if this is a look past game, which obviously would benefit Jacksonville, because they go on the road against the Niners for I guess a Super Bowl rematch of sorts, despite the fact that other than Harbaugh, they look completely different teams. Then they close out with back-to-back home games against the Dolphins, so that could very much decide the number one seed. And then they get to wrap up at home against Pittsburgh, which at that point Pittsburgh may just be. Can you imagine if Baltimore got to put the nail in Mike Tomlin's coffin?
Wow. Ooh, imagine that. Lamar with the hammer and nails.
So, I mean, do you think? I mean, that's actually outside of the Pittsburgh game. Obviously, this is actually a pretty formidable remaining schedule for Baltimore. That you can't, if they come out of this looking halfway decent, you can't say they're not battle tested going in.
No, totally. And I honestly feel that Harbaugh will have them set. That he's going to say, okay, here's our final four. We can't look past that. You can't look past anybody, especially in the seedings. Now, if everybody else in the AFC just screws the pooch, and by the second week it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that they've got the number one seed, then at that point maybe you let up and give some guys some rest. But no, I think they handle business against the Jags, and then you got the Niners. Could be a possible Super Bowl matchup, let's be honest here. So of course they're going to want to come and play their best play their best ball. And then if things haven't basically been decided, yeah, going against Miami could be the game. That could be the game that decides the AFC. So I think Harbaugh will have them focused and understand that, the job isn't done. We can't look past anybody. We can't worry about, what next week brings. We got to worry about this week. And I think they'll take that week to week mentality.
Yeah, this story came out in the last week or so about Miami's secret home field advantage with the way the roof's designed, that they just bake the opponent in the sun for the whole game.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I mean, it's granted, it's still Florida. I know it's still Miami, but January is not quite as baking as the rest of the year.
Depending what it is and what day, and sometimes sitting in that Florida sun, it's a little different than sitting, Midwest and Northeast kind of sun. So I've been in that stadium, and luckily I've sat in the end zones where there is some cover, so it's not as bad. But that sun beating down on you still lay a little something on you, especially when you're used to it, playing in, 45, 35, 40-degree weather and such. So
Yeah,
my it's still a little warm, but at the end of the day, you still got to play the game. So it's just a situation of controlling what you can't control, which means trying to play mistake-free ball and just keeping everything in front of you. So
yeah. Now the Jags have, I guess, well, by comparison, you could certainly say this is an easier finish. But two of the three on the road. Two of the three are not necessarily pushovers, or at least one of them's not necessarily a pushover. So
mm-hmm.
so after this they got to go on the road to Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Obviously Tampa's fighting for their ever living playoff lives.
Mm-hmm.
Then they get Carolina, so obviously that's a bit of an easy one. And
Don't talk about the division leading NFC South Tampa Bay Buccaneers like that.
No, I wasn't. I was talking about Carolina.
Well, we're not fighting for our division lives. We're division leaders. Get it right. No, kid.
um,
No.
and,
Mm-hmm.
and then they wrap up on the road against Tennessee, which, I mean, a couple of weeks ago Tennessee was looking like a pushover, but obviously that huge last minute victory against the Dolphins maybe makes Tennessee look like a bit of a trap game. So I mean that's. Do you think out of those three games that is enough for the Jags to maintain their division crown?
No, no, because if you look at how the Jags have been, they're uneven. Like, let's be realistic. You as a Colts fan, you feel confident that you can win that division.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, if their hardest game is, well, I mean, if their hardest game is Tampa and our hardest game is Vegas, and they're on the road and we're at home, I mean, in theory, we should have the tougher game of the two, but they're also on the road, so that.
You looking at how the Jags have played the last 3-4 weeks. Do you feel confident that you could say they could go 3-0?
No, but they also have the tiebreak over, so I really need them to lose two of those games.
Right. So could you honestly say, regardless of your fandom, that they could lose two of those games?
They could. No, they could, especially because we also have to count the Ravens game. So I could see them dropping.
If this was the Jags team of earlier, like let's say, when they beat, the Bills overseas and all of that, when they were rolling, then I'd say, okay, well, they may go 2-1 or whatever, not counting Sunday night, moving on from that game. But you don't know what Jags team you're gonna get.
Yeah.
So now you're sitting there, and they have to literally focus and say one game at a time. They don't have some cushion where they're like, okay, well, if we lose, this game, it's okay because we know we're going to do this and that. They know that people are breathing down their neck. That division's up for grabs. They can't make any mistakes now. Their room for error is now gone.
Right.
So the Jags now, from where we thought they were weeks ago, that's all gone. They're in the bar with everybody else.
Yeah. Speaking of being in the bar, the Bills are looking like they might get kicked out of the bar.
Wait a minute. Who?
The
fraudulent
Buffalo Bills.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So I mean, the only thing going for them in this one is the fact that they're home, I suppose. But we just saw Brandon Staley get ousted in the Chargers, so that fraudulent room's now locked up. can the Bills will the Bills be locking themselves in their fraudulent room after this one against the Cowboys? Do the Cowboys put the fork in Josh Allen and Sean McDermott and the Bills?
Oh, you poor table breaking people of Buffalo. It was a hell of a run, really was. Y'all had like a week or two where we thought y'all were great. Honestly, I don't give them a snowball's chance in hell. I really don't. They've got too many injuries. They've got more guys on the injury list this week. They no, I Dallas is too fast on defense. That offense is clicking like no other. No, no. If they can stay within 2 touchdowns by halftime, I'd be highly impressed. Like I don't believe in them. I don't think they can hang with Dallas. And that's weird. And that's weird because I've never talked about Dallas like this. Dallas has shown that they are legit now. You can't sit there and be like, oh well, if Dak does this, Dak has done it. Dak's in the MVP conversation. Dallas is a legitimate threat to make the Super Bowl. People have to give them their respect. Buffalo, as the massive key holder at the fraudulent motel, A for effort. If you got any Buffalo Bills on your fantasy teams, I'm sorry. May the man upstairs have mercy on your souls. This game is not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I'm going to be all wrong, and Buffalo's going to blow them out by 20 or something. But no.
Yeah, well, another stinker for America's Game of the Week. But then again, we thought that Philly America's Game of the Week against Buffalo is going to be a stinker too.
Yeah, well, sun shines on a dog's derriere every once in a while, but sun ain't shining this week.
Well, that in Dallas right now looks a lot better than Philly did when Buffalo played them.
Exactly. I think Dallas is hungry and Dallas knows what's at stake. Dallas knows that if they want the Super Bowl and they want to be that team, they have to handle business. And right now, that's what they've been doing. Yeah. They've been beating the teams they're supposed to be. They've been on point. Buffalo has been a massive cluster for the whole season. You can't trust them. You can't. And I don't think they can beat Dallas. They don't match well at all.
Actually, I think the America's Game of the Week stinker I was thinking of was when Dallas whooped up on the Giants. That's what I was thinking
of. Yeah.
The Philly game was actually competitive. Philly just looked awful in it.
Yeah, exactly. But, Buffalo's it's just a slow, painful death, and I think once the off season happens, there needs to be change there too. They've got to figure out what they want. They can't throw Band-Aids on this.
Yeah. Remaining schedules. Dallas has a bit of a rough one. They do get Washington. They do get Washington to close it out, but after this one, they have to stay on the road, play the Dolphins, and then that Detroit Lions game we were talking
about. Right. It's of course. I don't think you ever want to go. Especially when you're playing well. You want a softer schedule towards the end. You still want to be able to, have some competition because it's going to keep you sharp when you enter the playoffs. This is good for Dallas because they need to continue to show everybody that, hey, we are legitimate, because there are probably people still out there who don't believe in Dallas. They think this is all a facade. And then once the playoffs hit, first game, they'll be one and done. So, no, I think if they handle Miami, then at that point, everyone needs to say that Dallas is legitimate. Yeah. They are, but sometimes people need to be beaten the head a couple times to understand it, and that may very well be the game where everyone's like, "All right, we've dumped on Dallas long enough. They're legit." They've just played well, and they haven't made those mistakes of the Cowboys of the past, and I think they're just going to continue to handle business.
Yeah.
Plus, Miami beats the teams they're supposed to in theory, but can't beat 500 teams.
Yep. So you are on the record with saying they will take care of these two and hold on to that number 2 seed.
Yeah, I honestly believe Dallas is the number 2 seed. I unless an injury happens or they literally just forget how to play football, I think they've got it.
I mean, they could even be number 1 if San Francisco drops that Baltimore game. It's possible.
It very well could be, but at the same time, everyone thought that about the Niners and in Philly a couple weeks ago, and then that turned into an absolute. So like I can't I won't bet against the Niners.
Let's say this is a bad trap game for Dallas, and they somehow find a way to lose this game.
Okay.
The Bills are what do they get? They'd be 7-6 or something,
Hmm.
or are they 6-7 now? So maybe they'd be 7-7. So then they close out with the Chargers, the Patriots, and the Dolphins. Do they have a chance to crack that Cincinnati, Cleveland, Indianapolis party?
No, I don't believe in them. The Chargers, for some reason, will start to play great. All of a sudden, well, here's the thing: that stick kid is bad. I don't. Well, if you watched that game, I swear poor Amazon. They tried to hype this kid up. He was like 150-4, and blah blah blah. He slept on Carson Wentz's couch. He was the heir apparent to the North Dakota State. Like they tried to hype this kid up, and he just looked horrible, putrid. But if there's a game where he looks good, it'd be against Buffalo.
Right.
Belichick, I honestly believe this is it. I believe, they know that he's leaving. I think this is just how it's going to be. He is not going to leave without a fight. It's a division game. Wouldn't surprise me if somehow, Zappy puts up a touchdown at the end and just puts Buffalo to bed. So I don't trust Buffalo. So I could see him going maybe 1-3.
Wow.
I don't like they you have to look at them. They have not given you anything that's good. They don't. They just are so. Now, mind you, they have injuries on the defense and stuff, so there are things again going against them. But they are not this juggernaut team that they were a year or two ago when we were like, oh, automatic AFC, conference championships. They're not there anymore. You're barely 500. You're not. You're in a bad spot.
Yeah. We got a couple topics left before we wrap up the show. So let's talk about the ever changing world of the NFC South.
The hardest division in the NFL. Put some respect on that division. Put some respect on that name. And you want to talk about the division leading Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Well, that's true. They are division. They are in first place at the moment, and they. I mean, a couple weeks ago, this looked like it could have been a tough game going with Green Bay, but they just lost to Tommy Cutlets. So, and the Saints go to play that same Tommy Cutlets this week.
Oh, the Giants are dropping 40 on them. Tommy Cutlets is gonna light it up. I'm gonna tell you right now. Everyone jokes about it, and like he's the feel good story. I think he's got to be close to the feel good story of the year for the NFL. His family's there. Like his agent's a little weird, dressed all like with the black hat and stuff. Like it's like watching Goodfellas too. We don't need to go that far, but Tommy Cutlets just the team gravitates to him. So I think they're going to put some points up. But I digress.
And
But
and the third game, of course, Atlanta goes into Carolina this week. So, you've got at least one of these teams that's probably going to keep pace with you. Should you get by the Packers?
I don't know, man. Carolina's looking good.
Come on.
I'm telling you, they're playing for pride, man. Playing for pride. Don't I? You have you have those games where you're like, yeah, nothing's gonna happen, and then you're like, wait a minute, where did this come from? And all of a sudden, everything clicks. That one game. This could be the game for Carolina. Of course, I'm wishing for this, but you know what? This is one of the things where you can't worry about everybody else. We got to go. Got to go to Green Bay. Green Bay's licking their wounds. We can't go in there all lighthearted. Got to make sure that we handle business and just take it a game at a time. Right now, our only way into the playoffs is to win the division. So that's all it is. Can't worry about everybody else.
Do you think that that status quo is going to remain the same, and we're going to have what are they 6-7, a 7-7 tie, three-way
So
7-7 tie?
Wow. I said that I made that big prediction last week and I came out looking rosy, but I don't want to I don't think it'll happen. I I think we can beat Green Bay. I am strong. I do feel we can beat Green Bay. Um I like the Giants over the Saints. I just do. I think the Giants are due for that game
On
where
the
they
road.
where the uh, Saints are horrible, man. I'm tired of everybody. Derek Carr. You don't even who knows that Giants defense plays with pride.
Mhm.
Like, let's be realistic. That Giants defense is decent, and Carr isn't. If Carr plays a decent defense, he's not good at all. So that game will at least be entertaining. So if you're pulling my leg, I'm gonna go 51-49. That it stays status quo. But if you were to tell me one team loses and it's a two-team 7-7, I would say okay, I can see that.
Okay. Um, and the last game we'll touch on. So I didn't take the notes down of what their final schedules are, but I mean, all bias aside, who do you think is? Who do you think it does have the edge, or at least between you and Atlanta, since you're out, since the jury's out on New Orleans in your mind.
Honestly, I think we do.
which
Honestly, I think we. I think we have. I think
which
we have the edge.
which you have New Orleans at the end of the year because you've already played your two Atlanta games, and I think you've already played your two Carolina games.
Yes, I
Okay.
believe the Saints are left. So I believe. Yeah, I believe in Tampa. I think there's enough vet. These guys, we're only a couple of years removed from a Super Bowl. These guys know what it takes. We have talent. It's just we dug ourselves a hole, and these guys with Baker Bay leading us with that heart, and the run game is starting to show.
Mhm.
We could. I think we're peaking at the right time.
Our last game to touch on this week, and of course, as always, I'm sure there'll be a couple more that we're writing off because they're going to be horrible, and we'll have to talk about them. But the last one we at least want to talk about on paper is Houston at Tennessee because we touched on a little bit. Houston's hanging on to their playoff lives right now, and C.J. Stroud is not going to play.
Right.
So Tennessee, of course, as we hinted at, as we slightly touched on, coming off that huge victory over the Dolphins, the last minute comeback. So Houston, I mean, we could just expand on what we talked about before. I guess win or lose, this is a successful season because nobody was expecting anything from them. But I mean, do you think they're really in a situation where their goose is kind of cooked?
Honestly, yeah, I don't think their backup quarterback can really is. He's not CJ. Like, let's be realistic. It's gonna be it would be a situation where it would have to be the perfect storm for them to somehow pull it out. But I'm also saying that in a situation where, let's say, CJ misses the next 2 or 3 games.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest, they're not going to rush him back. You're not just to possibly have a chance to make the playoffs and not 100%. Like, you don't do that. You're not in that situation. You have to say, you know what? Let's make sure you're 100% and ready to go. If you're still lingering, we're not going to put you out there. Yes, this season has been an extreme success for Houston, and they're only going to get better. They've shown that they've got talent. They're gonna probably be serious players in free agency. Let's be honest. At this point, they're a solid team. Defense is young. That offense, they've got great wide receivers. Tank, is out for the year and all, but still, they probably could improve the running back position a little bit, but they've got talent. So I think they can only go up from here. So why push it? Titans, they're playing for pride. Rumors are that could be a coaching change. Mike Vrabel could be looking elsewhere for something. Who knows? But they really have to look at the running back position. I think Derrick Henry is real at this point. They have to start looking for his heir apparent. They really do. He probably should, if he wants a ring, maybe sign somewhere, kind of share the load, be, a goal line back. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't think he's that guy who carries for 20, 25 times a game and gets you 1,600 yards. He's not that physical guy anymore.
No, I
The,
mean,
the,
if you're Derrick Henry right now, just go somewhere and get yourself a ring.
you know what? He probably should have went to Philly. The rumors early in the year in the preseason were, oh, maybe Philly will trade for him. He needs to find a situation like that, or even Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Be Zeke 2.0. Be a better version of Zeke.
Can't be that. It can't be. Well, I guess it can't. The second half of Zeke's Dallas career can't be that hard to be better than that.
Exactly. So it all depends if Rabel wants to be part of another rebuild. I'm sure he was upset when they sent AJ Brown to Philly and such like that. So you look at that, you look at this team, and Tennessee is kind of like a hodgepodge of parts. So, like, what is this team going to be? Is this team built for long-term success? It's not. You're going to have to strip it down and rebuild it. Levis is a great piece to build around. I think he's shown some stuff. He's going to be your quarterback going forward. What else you have around there? It all depends what Vrabel wants. Maybe it's a situation where, New England knocks on the door and says, okay, what do you want for him? Head coaches have been traded in the past, so we'll see what happens. But Tennessee, playing with pride. That's what it is.
Well, we always play with pride, and there's a lot to see what's going to happen this week, Bucks McGee. We thought maybe we get it last week, but this week I think we really might get some clarity in this as the playoff picture winds down. What are you looking forward most to for Week 15? Take us off there.
Wow, Week 15. It's been an emotional roller coaster. The first coach has had a little, had black. What was that? Black Friday, and he wasn't shopping. So I hope Staley finds himself somewhere. But I'm really interested to see how this AFC picture pans out. I need to see how the fraudulent Bills pan out. This is the game I'm more interested in than almost my own. But like you said, I think once we get to the end Sunday night, we'll kind of really see how this playoff picture for both conferences look, and I'm excited. So, Nutmeg, as always, it's an honor and a privilege.